All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful live event. Higher Vibrations has given me a wonderful inspiration for this week's topic of actually, how can you know, excuse me, how can you know that you're actually awakening or you're on the awakening path, basically? And I have categorized, I had basically 3 points that I wanted to touch upon. And we also exchanged some information with Higher Vibrations, how to go about it. The first part of the topic will be what can trigger the whole process of awakening, and actually what is considered awakening. How can you actually tell that you're on that journey? The second part of I've categorized in 2 categories. What types of awakenings can you have? In my experience, and also what I've talked to with other people, there are 2. There can be the long format, which can happen in the period of many years. And you can have the short version, which I had, which happened in an afternoon. And we're going to share both our stories so people can reflect on that. And the most important part of this whole conversation is actually how to navigate this entire experience. So welcome everyone to our wonderful live event. I welcome also Higher Vibrations. Thank you for being here. And do you wish to start the topic on how can people actually recognize and know in a tangible way that they are actually on the path, other than that they're listening to this video, and that's kind of a good sign for it, that probably you wouldn't be listening to us if you weren't on that path.
Right. And actually seeking out information such as this, or doing any type of research, tends to be in a very early part of the awakening, and then continues through the awakening. So if you're here, like Guardian said, chances are you're on the awakening. So welcome. There are other things that are a little bit more subtle that will occur in the earlier stages of awakening. We'll notice ourselves starting to question things that we just took for granted as being truth before. A lot of us will look back in life and notice these things were already kind of a theme, though what I'm just discussing right now are a more pronounced version of it, as well as just all of a sudden noticing yourself kind of pulling away socially. Most people that I interact with regularly on our group Zoom meetings are considered antisocial or introverts. Antisocial is the aggressive term that people use. It's not antisocial. It's just that we are able to take in so much information by being in the presence of multiple individuals that it becomes overwhelming and taxing for us. Another point be made about that, you start to notice that you need time to recharge away from people, away from whatever you can, media and things like that. You start to pull away more. And while you're questioning these things, you begin to allow yourself to start to trust your instincts. You're starting to listen to your intuition a little bit. A lot of us still have at this point conditioning to not believe our truth. What's coming through is being truth. And there's a lot of layers to that. One in particular that people tend to work through at the beginning is there's some kind of belief that they're being vain if they say they have gifts, that there's something egotistical about saying that they're a powerful being. Well, you're a powerful being. Congratulations, you are, and getting over that hurdle is difficult. And that's, while that's happening, there's other signs. And so you start to notice numbers, synchronicities of numbers, you start to notice other kinds of things to try to validate you from the higher realms, and so, and noticing patterns as they come through. One of the most common and easy to see is that you realize that you can sense others. Not only when you think of that person, do they text you or call you, but when you walk into a room, you know exactly what, maybe not the detail of the character of what's being discussed, but you know everybody where they're at energetically when you walk in. It doesn't have to have any kind of background information about that. You start to notice that the more that you're pulling away from people, also strangers, random people that you will never see again or had never seen, want to tell you all their secrets. It's 12:12 right now, by the way. Tell you everything. They just kind of want to unload on you. And that's when you're kind of noticing you're pulling away from more people. So it's really odd. we attract these individuals. And then usually after all of these types of things are occurring, and there's a lot more to it, I'm trying to condense it as much as possible. Then you start to look at into like answers to these things like we're talking about, like this video, doing some kind of research, and that usually leads to a trigger word. My trigger word was empath. I'd never heard that word apart from watching Star Trek Next Generation. I remember being like, that lady's like me. So that was a pretend show, right? So I didn't, so yeah. And then they usually start with a profound experience, and almost immediately there'll be some type of a fear-based experience that comes in temporarily. And however long that temporary element is however long it takes you to stand into your power. And also the ascension symptoms that we talk about on my channel the most often, you notice your body's reacting in strange ways without ways to explain it medically. And those are all the basic. I don't know if I was too broad there.
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, in my perspective, like what can be considered the awakening process is, yeah, what you touched upon, that basically you start to question things that you have taken for granted. And basically that's the whole theme that we're experiencing here on planet Earth, that you're this infinite cosmic being of incredible potential and manifestational powers. And basically we forgot about it. When we came in, we forgot who we are. And of course, as we were growing up, we were conditioned with a lot of things that have conditioned us of the opposite of what we actually are. And basically, I think the awakening process starts when you actually start to question the conditioning, and you start to recognize that, hey, that maybe things aren't as I was taught in school, or I thought things functioned. And I think like that's kind of what triggers things, that you actually have this like divine spark that, hey, wait a minute, like there could be more to this than what meets the eye or what other people tell me that I should think. And you actually start to like think for yourself and like discern information, see what resonates and what doesn't. And like I think like that's like a crucial thing in life in general, but especially in the awakening process, of like actually learning to discern information of what resonates and what doesn't, because there are like so many misinformation that can like derail you from your path. And if it happens, it's perfectly fine. Like we all been there and do that sometimes, because like we're not perfect, so all of us are like on the same path. You just but if you like pay attention to it and like work on your discernment muscles, then you will start to become much better at it. Just like higher vibration always says that we are excellent lie detectors. And the best way that you can train your lie detection muscles are like being in tune with your own energy and experiencing many things through life. And I think that's really, and being, of course, very mindful and present while you're experiencing those many things in life, because that's how you learn. And that's, yeah, like that's where the whole empathic things comes in, that you start to like develop a vocabulary of energies as you're having these experiences. Since you're very sensitive, you can tap into different sources of energy. You can feel it, even if you're not consciously aware that it's happening. And because you are bombarded with so many different experiences all the time, if you are present and you're recording stuff, then you're starting to like develop a vocabulary of, okay, like if this happens and I feel this way, that means A or B. And if I feel in a certain situation in a different way, that means something else. Like when is this happening, it may not necessarily, you won't get it, but afterwards you're wiser for it. And whenever you sense the same thing again, then you will know that, oh, okay, like this is happening again, and this is what it is. And that's the same way with when you're having contact with different otherworldly beings and like sensing different energies, is that you will learn that what feels a way, like what does that mean? And yeah, basically anything can appear as ever they want to appear, but what is important is their energy. Like, how do they feel? What do you feel inside when you're in the presence of a human being, or maybe something other than a human being? How does that feel? And yeah, like, it's a journey, and you're going to fail a lot, and that's part of the process.
Right.
Yeah, but that's how you learn. So yeah.
Exactly. You reminded me of an element too that tends to be a real typical experience. And this is usually when we're in the middle of questioning still. We're like, really like, am I crazy? Or am I finally realizing the truth? Like there's that,
Oh, yeah,
I don't really know. And in that place, because I think of that uncertainty and that lack of self-trust, and in being able to trust your own intuition and things like that, we slowly move into that. So it'll take a little bit, and just allow yourself, knowing that you'll be okay, you'll get there if you're not there yet. Usually what happens somewhere in the middle there is the person realizing all of these things that they've been taught to take for granted as truth for so long were lies. And there's like that betrayal experience, and that I need to go tell everybody, and like needing,
I
and
was
like,
very angry, for example. Like in my
yes,
first few weeks, I was very angry at many things in life.
yes, it usually comes out exactly like that. Anger, there's two root emotions. There's love and fear, and that's the same for all things in the universe, which is really interesting. I mean, I didn't realize it before, and it just makes sense now. And so that base root of anger comes from fear, or that emotion of, and so it just, oh my goodness, all of this time I've not been told anything true, it feels like. And then you learn to start to question everything, and that's characterized in a lot of books as a earmark of insanity. So it's easier to then question your sanity further, and struggle to find that self-trust and that belief in self and your own experience. And then somewhere along the way, we find each other. We find others that validates that. So I'm just telling you that to give you hope, to show you that you're not going to stay there forever. I was talking with some people the other day, and I've forgotten about it. Back in the earlier portions of awakening, jumping down a rabbit hole meant uncovering bad news. It meant discovering how many more lies and awful things were happening down some secret hole that you didn't know about. And it's transformed for me to, I'm jumping down a rabbit hole of discovery, and so it looks different. And most of the time, the beginning of the rabbit hole, what I mean by rabbit hole is when someone starts a suggestion of like, or somehow a piece of information comes forward for you, and you begin to research that, like we discussed a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And following that thread will lead you to a point of revelation. And often they don't have anything to do with one another. Like what could have led you down that rabbit hole could have been complete BS, had nothing to do with any kind of reality anywhere in any kind of universe. However, it led you to find this piece of information that you left behind in spirit form as a breadcrumb. We have breadcrumbs everywhere, like all throughout all of our experience, and they come to us. It's not a mistake, like most of us are, I guess, can be considered geeks, right? Or nerds. I don't know which one's the cool one anymore. It used to be geeks was cool. Anyway, the geeks are right. The stuff that we watched in Star Trek and Star Wars and all of these like comic book kind of stuff, a lot of that's true. Turns out we're the superheroes they've been writing about. Like, it's like, it's fun to discover we've been told and given breadcrumbs of truth for this long. And as they come forward for us, they activate that dormant part of our knowing and remind us of a whole nother expansion that you get to have in your own space, and you don't even have to follow any kind of resource to get to that point after that. So anyway, just trying to bear some hope, because that panic place of I've been lied to, and just for that's hard. That's a big chunk to try to chew.
Yeah, like that's what triggered the whole process for me too, especially in the first few weeks too. Yeah. But yeah, like regarding the whole emotional side of it, or like what can you go through when you're like breaking down emotionally and mentally in those beginning phases? And yeah, like that's really comes in when that you're questioning your sanity when you're having an emotional breakdown.
Right.
For me, it was very strange or like very complex because I had all these like revelations and my old reality bubble was like popped. So I was like in free fall of like discovering all these things that I didn't know about prior to it.
Hmm.
In part, it was very scary, but in the other, at the same time, it was very like exhilarating and exciting. And I was having a lot of fun with it because in the first time in my life, like things started to make sense actually.
Right.
But yeah, at the same time, it was very difficult emotionally because the emotional body and your conscious mind just cannot really cope with that huge of a shift at such a short amount of time.
Hmm.
So yeah, it can be very draining. Like I know like the first month, at the end of the first month, I was like emotionally completely exhausted. Like I went through so many peaks and valleys in just in 1 month that my mother recommended that I go to a psychiatrist. And I said, like, no, like this is part of the process. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it was a good decision on my part.
Yes.
Because yeah, like after those first maybe 1 or 2 months, like things really calmed down because I like went with the waves and emptied out and like got rid of all the things that were like hindering me from moving forward. And after that, like things became a lot easier for me in the whole process of awakening.
Right. And it's a very important thing that occurs for each of us to have that trigger to, and just to be clear about something too, is that most of these people talk about triggers, at least in this culture where I'm at, Guardian, that the trigger means you're doing something offensive. Stop, please. People go trigger, 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 and it's like time to stop. And I understand that thinking. I remember feeling that way. However, those triggers come to us in order to reveal those pieces of information to us, and so when we get triggered, it just going along that vein of the psychology thing and like am I crazy kind of stuff, that's something that I find in that culture teaches to not do. And I feel like that's a disservice to self. That's a time for you to see, oh, this is what information is important to me in some way. And like you said, we are the world's best lie detectors. And so we always kind of knew there was something funky about what we were doing. At least I did, whether even when you're trying to assimilate, you're trying to fit in and be kind of part of the crew, the crew that you're with, it still just doesn't, it feels so fake. You feel like you're on a stage playing a part and it's all lies, and that breaking away that happens from societal standards is often deemed as a form of insanity as well. Like, oh, a crazy garden lady, she's over there hanging out with her.
Normal.
Yeah. Why is she over there hanging out with her plants instead of over here barbecuing cow with us? And like it's a thing that is a slow process as well. Do you mind if I go into the version of my awakening that
Yeah. So basically this is like the second part of categorize the awakening process in like two. Like these are just boxes and like the extreme examples of it. And there can be the long version, which higher vibrations had, and I'm going to also explain the short one, which I had.
Thank you. Do you want me to go first, or would you
Yes,
like to
please.
go?
Yeah. I think most people have the more gentle one, which is like can span over years. And God bless anyone who was contracted to do the short version.
Yeah. Some of the stuff you've told me about. Yeah. So for me, it that it really started that I had a near-death experience when I was 4, and I brought in a lot of information from that. Though immediately after that experience, I started having what you could call a psychic attacks. And it distracted me from knowing of what had happened. I'd always had that memory. It didn't go away of my near-death experience. It's simply that I slowly convinced myself it didn't really happen. And that helped me to go through this period of kind of knowing, but for the most part, you know, still doing societal stuff, 3D stuff. So noticing things like what I struggled with the most was trusting myself. That's just honestly still something I've just gotten through, is that what I discussed earlier, that ego thing of like, if I say my truth out loud, I'm living I'm being egotistical. I'm being vain to admit the possibility that I'm not, you know, below everybody else, you know, kind of a thing. That was just the way I was conditioned and raised. So that was my biggest struggle. I would have astral experiences and again, blame them on dreams, you know, convince myself, you know, and a lot of the stuff was secret. I kept a secret and of all of these things, only a few times discussing it. Interacting with people who had passed away, that became something people knew about, but for the most part, I was just I was still going to McDonald's and drinking gallons of Mountain Dew and that was my lifestyle. And then looking back now, I can see that I had what I call phases of awakening. So I had profound experiences, probably similar to what Guardian's going to talk about, not in such a rapid and condensed way. But over a long period of time, I have phases. Like my first phase of awakening, I'd say when I was 4, that near-death experience, and then 7, and I'd go up the line, you know, and I kind of like, I take these steps slowly. I'm not on an escalator like people like Guardian. And, you know, having ET experiences, but then convincing yourself they're not real, and seeing spaceships, and only 2 events I have experiences with, there was somebody else there. So those ones, I still even question the sanity of the person that saw it with me, those types of things, you know, and at the same time, having experiences that I'm not sure if I'm sane, you know, having this thing where I was completely drained by the energy of a space. I just moved into a new place. The energy there was really bad and dense for me. And I became incredibly like lethargic and just drained, emotionally depressed. And I was able to see disembodied arms above me. And yeah, you don't tell people about that, right? Those disembodied arms were glowing, though I couldn't see any. I knew that somebody was standing there. It was obvious the way the arms were. That was the part that I was able to see in a cloudy kind of way. And I could feel the density being lifted off of me. I could feel the light being filled into me in places where it had been absent for a time, you know, and that was real. And I know it, but we're taught that if we can't prove it scientifically, then it's not real. If someone compared me to who I was before and after each one of these phases of awakening, they'd say I was a whole different person. There's that provable element, though, you know, and so I had brought into question often the validity of my experience, you know, and so for that sake, based on that part of it, I would say that the rapid awakening might be easier to do because you don't have time to disprove yourself, to lose trust. So that was my version. I would say that it was rapid in small doses throughout time.
Okay, well, mine wasn't like a constant acceleration. I think in the first 3 years was this like very going up very quickly. And after I have reached a level, it kind of started to like slow down a bit and not be as drastic. But yeah, like my first 3 years were like, I don't know, like boot camp on ranger. How do you call that when you go? I think you have that very intense training of like rangers in space or something.
Black Ops team or something. Navy SEALs?
Yeah, like something like that on spaceships.
Okay.
Okay, so basically mine has started, like I also lived a very 3D-ish life. but like I was like never really into it. Like that's what I perceive what is going to make me happy, because everyone else is doing it and I have absolutely no better idea what to do with my life. So I went with that direction. But yeah, like the more I got into it, the worse it became, like how I felt and how detached I was from my core self. Since at the point that I became actually, I'm not sure if I was sick, but I was having difficulties with my heart. And I went to, I think, like 2 cardiologists, and they did all the tests and there was nothing physically wrong with me. But I had difficulty like even going up on this to the second floor. Like I had to stop twice to rest because my heart just couldn't take all that pressure. And since it was 2012, it was in February of 2012. Oh, it's 22:33 here. And yeah, and this whole notion of like people talking about it, that it's going to be the end of the world at 2012 and all that. And I know, like I was sitting, I was at work alone, like I was sitting in a balcony, and I was thinking about this, like, hey, what if it is actually the end of the world? Like what have I done in life, like so far, and what kind of goals did I have in life? Like, am I actually happy? Like all the things that I worked for and wanted to achieve are like actually like representative of my highest joy, or are they actually what makes sense to me within? And the answer was no. Like they are not good. Like I was not in a good path. And basically when I had this realization, being very honest with myself, then this like whole wave of like love just came over me, like around me, through my body. And basically I just started to cry and become very emotional from it. Like I never experienced anything like that before. And yeah, like that was super beautiful. And also, yeah, like it's super transformative too. And after that, like Pandora's box was open. Like there was no closing it anymore. And it basically started to trigger a lot of different experiences, especially when I tried to go to sleep. So that's when the crazy shit happened, when I tried to rest and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I had very much difficulty with rest. Oh, just something flew up my wall. Okay. Yeah, it's the message that I have written for the new moon. I'm not sure if I'm going to read something from it, so we'll see.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, it's my to-do list for creating the video for the new moon message. Okay.
Maybe you're supposed to mention that you're going to be producing a video for the new moon.
Oh, it's already done. So it will be published on Sunday. So look forward to that. And also High Vibrations assisted me with fine-tuning the message. I usually write them down, the channelings, and I send it to her because she actually speaks English. That's her,
right.
that's her native language. And yeah, like you have a different interpretation for stuff because you actually do use that language all day long. I'd only use it for YouTube stuff. So yeah, okay.
Well, you do very well. There's very little fine tuning that I do, just to be clear, but I'm always happy to help. It's fun to get to hear the message before anybody else too, I gotta say.
It's super exclusive stuff.
Ooh. There's another point to what you were saying too that I'd like to add, if you don't mind. You know, when we're getting all of this stuff coming in and we're feeling all of this betrayal and anger and all this kind of stuff, a lot of times that we don't realize what we're doing, but we're triggering these scary experiences. You know, we're living in the resonance of fear and anger space. So a lot of times we'll get what we call psychic attacks, though they're that looking back, and I had mentioned briefly that I had one when I was 4, right after the experience. And looking back, I can see how that truly benefited me. Not everyone has those experiences, but to let you know.
Psychic attacks as a kid, and I guess many of us did too. We just didn't know what it was.
Exactly. And, you know, that particular experience kind of helped quiet my awakening and keep me kind of a little bit cautious and away from that stuff, just enough that I was able to continue through the life I was living and through high school, you know, and very gradually my body started to tell me not to eat certain things, by the way. And I wasn't listening at first. I used to have the antacids, you know, like that was like a regular thing. You knew that when you ate, you needed those. And I was eating things like hot dogs and fast food and no judgment for anyone who chooses to do that. It wasn't okay with my body, and it was saying no for a long time. And anyway, after time, all of a sudden my body started to reject these foods in a more strong way. And I was called somebody who has a meat allergy. And after a while, at first I was like, oh, red meats or whatever. And then, you know, moving on. And after a while, omitting this here and there, I'm like basically a vegan now, which I used to tease vegans. I mean, I'm sorry, everybody, but I did. And now that's basically who I am. You know, I say basically because occasionally I still use butter and things like that. But, and to be clear, though, it happened over a period of time, very slowly. What I find intriguing is that the doctors are talking about these mass food allergies that all of a sudden the world is having. Like it's becoming like a thing. And to me, from this perspective and knowing what's going on, I'm like, the world is ascending. We're all awakening. And as we move into our higher body, a lighter body, meaning a light body space more than a denser space, certain things we can't metabolize, we can't process and digest. It doesn't work for us.
It's heavy. It keeps you down. Yeah.
And most meat has fear in it, you know, like it's right in the meat. And that kind of, you're not just taking the density of the food, but the experience of the creature right before it dies, and also its life, you know. And that's not really trying to pull out, you know, stand on a soapbox of being ethical. It's simply that's what happens.
Yeah,
and so
that's what happens to that food, and that's what you put in your body, and that's what your body uses up.
exactly. And so this is happening across the board enough that people like doctors are saying people are having these mass food allergies all of a sudden, you know, after having lived a full life eating those things, those being your favorite foods, and then for some reason venturing out and know that I can't eat things that have been contained in cans. I'll start to behave in a way that I feel like I've been poisoned. And then, you know, it does limit for me what I can and can't eat compared to what I had been eating before, though we find a way. As soon as our body says this isn't okay with us, an option for replacing it in a higher, lighter way always comes in, you know. So that was just a point I wanted to make. It doesn't happen like that for the body. It's a gradual thing.
Yeah, usually. Just follow the advice of your body. And yeah, at the same time, after I had that awakening experience, gradually I also started to shift from meat eating stuff to lighter things. But it was like not a very smooth transition for me because we didn't really have as much information back then about these stuff as we have right now. And for me, it was like quite a long learning curve to what to eat to fulfilled and also to have energy and all that. So I was not doing very well in the first 2 years, I think. It was not very balanced what I did, but hey, I didn't want to eat meat anymore. Like it didn't feel good. And I know like after a few months of like shoving chicken meat down my throat, I was like, why am I eating this? Like, it doesn't taste good. I don't enjoy it. So why do I eat it? So
right. Yeah.
I was
I'll
like,
still do it.
it's gonna stop then.
We'll still do it occasionally. I have a kiddo who likes pizza occasionally, and so sometimes we'll get pizza. And I know, though, if I don't eat the pizza with meat on it. However, I know that I'm going to be sick after I eat this, and I still do it.
Yeah, like this is the shungite that people were talking about. It's a black shungite orgonite pyramid, and it has a little heart on it. That helps, I guess. So I don't know.
There's a lot of examples of that too that you can get really affordable. There's like, this is a Oregon puck. It's just tiny, but it's
It's
there's
made of chocolate.
it looks like it's food, doesn't it? It's got a red color to it. I got it. I guess it was a addition to what I had bought. I bought bigger pucks to put in the windows and stuff. The Oregon. I'm bringing this up. There was a conversation in one of your earlier lives afterward in the comment section talking about what it was, and noticing that the sleeping pod that Guardian has is, I have one as well, and I looked back at that website. It's almost tripled in price. They're very expensive. And this was free. The pucks that I got I got a set of 4 of them for $5 on Etsy. In fact, if you want me to share the code for that so they can get a 10% off.
Okay.
It's at the Organite Andy. Here, I'll just put it up there so you can see it. And the code is Buster 10. And you get a 10% discount. These are really helpful. These are super, super helpful. Probably should have taken it out of the bag. It clears the energy like an air purifier. It clears the energy and makes it so. They're not sponsoring us or anything like that. They're just awesome, and it's cheap. It's affordable, rather. It's a good product. What's that?
This is not cheap at all. Like, it was pretty expensive like 3 years ago too. So
right, and prices are really changed now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options on Etsy, on all kinds of different websites, just to make that available for you all. I went to the place where we got the sleeping pods, and like, I think they're like $400 now. It's like, wow. So, and anyway, you don't have to overspend to be able to change your energy and be happy, is what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry that I hijacked the topic. I was just like, that is such a useful thing right now, especially we got the 5G and all that other stuff happening. We got all this different energy stuff. It really helps. And honestly, it changes your spiritual awakening experience. When you can remove the outside noise stuff, then what you're doing spiritually is just so much easier to translate, to understand what's happening in some way, to be able to feel it, and it also is part of the last part of the topic too. It helps you to navigate this awakening a bit. When you have a lot going on and it's distracting the energy and it's just loud noise, it's bothering you, it can make it more difficult to find that 0 point, to go to that place of peace and love, and so they're pretty cheap. They work. Any kind of stone that you're drawn to, even just walking around outside, will help you. They're there. All these stones are calling out to you, that your attention is drawn to them because they know they can help you at that time. So
yeah, like, try them out. But basically, they're like tools that can assist you on the journey, but they will not do it for you. But it can make the journey lighter. Like, that's what I've experienced from them. That I felt this heaviness on me, and since I used them, I kind of got used to it, so I don't feel a difference now any longer. But when I got them, I could definitely feel something shifting it physically in my body too. Like, it has like rearranged things and like expelled certain stuff from my body and from my field, and I just became like much more lighter after that. So I highly recommend it if you can find a good source for it. Okay, so I don't know, like, maybe should I continue with the journey that I experienced somewhat? I won't go into the scary stuff. I don't want to scare people. Okay, so basically, we talked about like Pandora's box was open and like there's no closing it. And I had all these wild experiences whenever I tried to go to sleep or in the middle of the night. And I had many, many crazy out-of-body experiences with different beings. And in the beginning, I absolutely had no clue like what was happening. I was just starting to become very scared of it. Almost like this whole, as you have like a Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, that you're afraid to go to sleep because something is going to happen when you do that. yeah, like I started to develop like PTSD from all that stuff, so that was not fun either, and had different mental breakdowns in those periods. So it was not a very easy period of my life, but it was like basically like, I don't know, like supercharging my whole awakening experience. And I was bombarded with all those experiences to basically force me in a new direction, to actually awaken and to stand in my power and to own my own energy. Like that's what they were like pushing me towards, even though it was very uncomfortable and very scary most of the time. But it kind of it did teach me many valuable lessons. So each scary and weird experience like made me stronger and like teach me something. And as soon as I started to like actually stand in my own power and like realize that, hey, like I can actually do stuff and I do have a say in this and I can do things also energetically. And from the moment that I actually realized that, then it like completely shifted around the whole stuff. Like it wasn't, I mean, I still had some very freaky experiences afterwards too, but it was not in the same way that I'm a victim to it and I have like no saying what is happening. Like I was like participating in it, and even though it was like very challenging, like I know that I can do something with it, or I'm there to change it, or I can proactively do something in that experience. Like it doesn't just happen to me and I have to suffer through it. And yeah, like I think that's what they were really pushing towards. And to be honest, like I couldn't really tell the difference between the good ones or the bad ones, if you want to like marginalize groups of like beings coming in, because all of them were very scary for me because I had no clue what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't have this vocabulary of like, okay, like what is good and like what should I avoid? Like
Right.
all of them kind of like blended together in my mind. I couldn't tell the difference. And yeah, it was very difficult and scary for quite a few months, I think. But yeah, like as soon as I started to actually stand in my power and to own my own energy, the whole thing just turned around completely.
Right.
And for some people, that may take a lifetime. For some, it can take a few weeks or months, and it can be a longer process too. So it depends on like how willing you are to actually stand on your feet and own your own energy. Yeah, but I didn't really have much of a that wouldn't be fair to say that I didn't have a choice about it. Well, I would have like tried to ignore it and go crazy, or actually stand in my power and do something
Right.
about it.
I think the difference there is a person realizing that they can remove consent or give consent that occurs in that window of experience, where we standing in our power and realizing we can say no. In fact, when you say no, when you remove your consent, it will stop, and if whatever it is that you're not okay with, it's like, oh, and a lot of things too that come through, they may feel, to me, I'm very emotion based. Like I feel like I'm like this lovey-dovey emotion, yay person. And so when I feel these energies come in that are very logical and they're very not emotion and da 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 da, those guys are scary to me at first when they first come in. Like I'm getting used to them now, but those can also feel scary too, just to,
Yeah, Thoth kind of has that energy
yeah,
too. It's like super precise and logical.
yeah,
Almost like
yeah.
Spot or something similar.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's probably one of the, and he's been coming in a lot lately. And I feel like I want to take a shower after I hang out with him because it's just like
Really?
they get the energy out because he just like, it feels so sterile. And
Boy,
it's
okay.
not uncomfortable. It's just, like I said, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. But I speak with my heart. And when someone doesn't speak, isn't speaking with their heart, they're speaking with their higher mind. I'm like, yeah, it feels weird to me. It's funky. I can
Okay.
see you enjoying them though. You're closer to the Spock spectrum than I am.
Yeah, for me it was kind of overwhelming too in the beginning too, but I very quickly tuned into it and like understood like what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like also when you're having these experiences with different types of beings, like you have to like understand that they function differently, like they think differently. Just kind of you can take it like as you live in your culture. Most of us listening live in a Western society. And if you were to interact with someone who has lived their entire lives for generations in the rainforest, isolated from all of this, you would have difficulty relating to each other and communicating with each other. And like imagine that if they were living in a different world, in a different society, on a different plane of existence, they would be very different from us. So yeah. And also, I think like the whole, I wouldn't say like friction, but like the difficulties and like communicating, like can happen like in both ends, like us not being able to relate to them. But at the same time, some of them are also like figuring stuff out as they go along. Like, how can we actually talk to these people? Like, what can we do with them? Because they as well, like some of them also have difficulty understanding like how we think and what is important to us and what is not and all that. So for them as well, it's a learning curve, not just for us.
Exactly. And there's this kind of this understanding that comes through that really does help, and there's something that got brought up. Do you mind if I change the topic for?
Okay, but afterwards we should like go into the part of like how to navigate this whole process.
It actually kind of relates to that. Carmen mentioned or brought up the dark night of the soul and Kundalini awakening, that stuff that happens early in the beginning, or not in the beginning, when that stuff starts to really happen. That's where the way to navigate that really comes in. I feel like every one of us, whether we know it or not, have multiple dark night of the soul. Another way to say that is a light being shown on the soul, a light floodlight opening up in a room that hasn't been lit for a long time, so you can see the cobwebs. You can see what needs to be uncluttered and released, and it's a difficult process when it's first occurring, and so that I would say that's usually the time that people reach out and say, what's going on? I need help. And you're noticing that people are shedding from your life. You're shedding things that no longer serve you. You're finding yourself feeling isolated and alone. Finding groups like Guardian here and for me, his live events, chatting in this chat section, I looked forward to it all week long as a way to connect with other people who are going through the same thing, and having that experience really assists us to continue forward. It's like a support group. Guardian has his Patreon meetings and I have my Zoom meetings, and there's just a lot of places that do it as well. So just keeping that in mind, that you don't have to be alone in this, so you go ahead, Guardian. I just wanted to bring that up because it was a good point.
Yeah, like we have the magic of internet right now, so use it. I know, like, I think most of us physically are kind of isolated from like-minded people because like we kind of chose these circumstances to, I think, like have maximum effect over the broader area that we can like touch energetically. So I think most of us don't really have family members or friends that are like in tune with how you feel or how we feel inside. But now online, like you can find a lot of stuff, also communities, it's for free. So it's all on you if you want to connect or not.
Exactly.
Also, like you can find people just like us, like talking about this can be really helpful. Like I know that really helped me along the journey, especially in the beginning phases too.
Yeah.
And what you've been also talking about kind of goes into this third part of like how to navigate it. And yeah, like regarding the whole Dark Night of the Soul stuff, I think like the whole awakening for most of us kind of starts with that, when you realize things that you held to be true are not true, and maybe your whole life was a lie or stuff like that. Can be a very deep Dark Night of the Soul event. And there can be further ones down the line, like regardless of like how awakened you are or how further you progress on the path, you can still have like these transformational periods, just as you had in the beginning of your awakening.
Yeah.
When like, okay, you reached a stage And like in order to reach a next level on your journey, like some stuff need to go from your life, and you need to face some real stuff that you maybe been avoiding all your life. You thought that you figured it out by like ignoring it and like resolved it that way, and then it like comes up because like, okay, like now it's time to clear that stuff out of the way. And yeah, like I think the best thing that I can advise, if I can give an advice on this, is like in the first phases, I think after like one or two like dark nights of the soul, I kind of managed to like develop a way of how to deal with these situations and to how to resolve them. And after a time when shit hits the fan, when you have like the next dark night of the soul, like it's no longer as scary or insurmountable or difficult, because you kind of like already figured out a way how to deal with these situations in the first place. And like I think like that's what also many spiritual teachers talk about, of like people asking about enlightenment and self-realization and all that fluffy stuff. That okay, like if you get like enlightened and become very spiritual, then you won't have a problem in your life and there will be zero difficulties for you and all that. And like you will still have difficult parts in your life. The only difference is like that you can like deal with it differently than you have before, or differently as the majority of the population handles it. And the key in that whole process of like actually going in fully aware and consciously of like wanting to resolve the situation rather than ignoring it and like shoving it under the rug, which I think most of us have done in certain points in our lives, and many people are doing it right now as well. And basically the whole key in the process is like actually have the willingness to like work with those unpleasant energies, to bring them forth in whatever shape or form, like it works for you, to bring them forth, to face them, to clarify like what is not working for me right now, like what are the things that are out of alignment, and like be very open and be very honest with yourself, like what is actually not working for me right now, and what are the things that I need to change. And like whenever you have that question, like you can maybe do it verbally or write it down, maybe for asking for guidance, assistance, or answers to what would be the most optimal path in your life. When you like actually clearly like ask for assistance in this whole process, then you start basically you start like a whole process of remedying that situation, like attracting events, people, may that be like physical, or maybe a guide will help you with that whole process. Like it can be absolutely anything. Like it all depends on like what makes sense to you and what is the most optimal path for you specifically. Like it works for everyone differently. But when you have clearly stated an intent that, okay, like I know like what's wrong, or at least I have a sense for it, and I ask universe or my guys or whatever, like please clarify it for me so I can see like what is wrong, like, and how can I change it, like, and also what's super important is like a cheat code. Is like, and help me that I go through this process as quickly and easily as possible. Like I don't want to waste time and energy on this, because these stuff can be resolved very quickly if you have the guts to do it, basically. And they will actually help you and resolve it very quickly. Like it can happen. It depends on what it is, but you would be surprised that certain issues that seem like it's super insurmountable to you, when you actually like sit down and like tackle that problem head on with your support team, you can go through it very quickly. So yeah. And after you have done so, you're like, oh, like this wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be.
After the fact, it's always easier to it's more palatable looking back and seeing. And that's actually true for all of these experiences. Most often we can look back once we're here in this knowing place. You can look back and realize that we've been having these events occurring for the beginning of this lifetime incarnated here. looking back and seeing all of these signals and memories, having all the memories coming in of all these like ET interactions that happen throughout your life, not realizing it because you weren't ready to realize it yet. All that kind of stuff comes forward, and all the answers come forward for you too. The most activating thing I could say is the trigger words that help you. That like, for instance, the word dark night of the soul. When I heard the word, when I found out what they called it, and that's what I had just a little bit longer to finish it, and then I see that how it kind of works for everybody. And so once you find out what you're doing, then you can do it, is basically what it comes down to.
Anymore.
Yes.
Not the great unknown.
Exactly. No one's out to get you. They're all here to support you in some way. Something else just came through recently, helping. There's a lot of people waking up right now. The amount of people in the new part of the awakening journey is like such an astronomical number of, and I'm so impressed to be able to feel that. By the way, that's what a lot of you are feeling right now. There's a lot more heart palpitations and anxiety bursts of it. That's us feeling these people going, they're lying to us, doing that part.
Oh,
yeah, and also having these other
ETs
alarming
are real. Yeah, like for some reason, like ETs are coming in hard and like in mainstream media and like society.
Here, even the local muggles are freaking out because of these mirrored pyramid UFOs that are revealing themselves enough, and that's fun because I've been seeing them, but then now the muggles are talking about it. It's like, whoa, they're seeing them too.
The natives are becoming restless.
Yes. And while that happens, while all this stuff comes in, to know that you are a sovereign being of light. Oh, that's something else, that this new thing I'd never heard of before. I was helping somebody, and this collective came in that are in place to assist the Ascension people, the people in the beginning of the Ascension experience and the beginning of the awakening. They're called the Council of Light. I've actually never channeled or heard of them before. I did a little bit of research. That's one group that you can reach out to. However, what I did is I reached out to Archangel Michael. I reached out to, all the archangels, the main archangels that we talk about. Raphael, Sandalphon. There's a lot of individuals that Megatron. If I can ever remember how to say his name, I usually call him Megatron instead of Metatron.
That's
Transformer.
That's something else.
Yeah. But he knows who I'm calling. That's the cool thing about these higher realms. They really don't care what name you call them. If you're calling them, if you say it wrong, they still know that you're calling them. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah, because the intent is there, basically.
Exactly. It's a resonance of heart. And, just knowing what you're going through is more than half the battle of navigation, in my opinion. And knowing that you can reach out to these guys. The reason I didn't reach out to the archangels very regularly before was I thought that if I was utilizing their help, what if somebody else needed their help more than me, and I was selfishly coveting them, and when I realized and was shown that they're omnipresent, meaning they can be everywhere at the same time if that's a need, and that I'm not taking away from anyone else, then it became easier to call on them. And also they want to be called on. However, they require your consent to come in and assist you. So when you do call for them and ask for help, they will always be there. However, most often, and there are some cases or some exceptions to that rule, they won't come in unless you give consent, unless you request their presence. So keeping that in mind, that's true for a lot of these higher realm energies that are here to assist us.
Yeah, like they're not going to intrude upon your own life experience, because like it's your journey and you know what you're doing. Like that's kind of how they see it. Like you're an expert creator being, and they're just not going to intervene with that. But if you ask for help, then they will assist with that.
Exactly. Daniel also wrote in the comments earlier, the Kadosh, 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 Adonai Symbiote. And it's a beautiful chant that I've found as a guardian showed it to me, taught it to me. I'll post it in the comment section later on if Guardian doesn't get around to it because I can't do it yet until the live's over. Although I can't give you the link to it. Okay. As someone who's not your channel, you can't put in links anymore. They won't let you.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think Thanya has written down in the chat box.
Yeah, she has. And there's just a lot of things, and just letting yourself know that you are a powerful being, that you have this in you, this ability. Thank you for pinning that comment. And all it takes is for you to stand in that power, like Guardian had already said, and reach out to others like you that are in this experience. There are a lot of us. I am so amazed by how many people. Really, maybe there's like 9 of us floating around, you know what I mean? And to be in this and to find out how many, and that how many more are waking up right now. Guardian has his Patreon community. And I have the twice weekly Zoom meetings that we just get together and just chat. You don't have to talk, I don't think on Guardians either. You just come and just be a part of, and hearing other people tell your story and to know that you're not alone, it melts away all the barriers. Yeah, it makes it easy. Yeah, it really helps, and it's and to have that camaraderie in that community, it's amazing, and you've seen it a couple of times here in this. We're called the Light Warriors. That I have a Telegram group too. It's called Light Warriors. And so, it's just fun. We connect and from all over the planet. That's the best part, is when you're having something weird happen and you're like, all right, guys, all of a sudden I have these weird heart palpitations and my face started vibrating. And then you're all these likes and me, the same people all over the planet at the same time, like that is the most validating thing of all. You could say, well, maybe it's because where you're at, your neighbor feels that way, or maybe you have a cold or whatever. But for everyone to feel that same thing all over the planet at the same time, it's pulled us away from being able to think that, it's a passing virus or something like that, for instance. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's super helpful if you have people to reflect and to assist you through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, in closing, do you wish to share anything else regarding this topic?
Sure. I'm sorry. I didn't realize we talked so long. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, just knowing that you are 100% safe, and that all of these energies, all of these things coming in are really part of Team Body. They're really on your team, and to understand that some of these energies are annoying little brothers, that maybe you don't want to jump out behind the couch to try to startle you. Tell them no. I'm not okay with that. With love, I find that when I do it with love, then it's taken. And that's the last point that I really wanted to make, is that when if you're having an exchange with some type of energy, whether it's visual, you feel it, whatever's going on, send it love. And what I mean by sending it love is to feel that, what it feels like to be hugged by the most loving person that you know, and then to send that out to that energy through my heart. I always do it through my heart. And I can actually now, after I've done it for a while, these days, I feel it leave my pores. I feel the love, like it feels like air. And when you do that, if it is of love, it will answer back with love in an amplified way, like 10 times or more. If it's not of love, it will flee. For love and fear cannot coexist. The shadow cannot stand before the light. And so it's 1111, 111 here. That's the most empowering thing that I found, was the use of the tool of love in that way, and that you get to choose. You decide. You're not a victim of circumstance. Most of these experiences coming through are soul contracts or agreements you made before you came here. You can choose. Soul contract seems so binding. You can choose to change your idea of your agreement and say, never mind, I'm done doing this now. Thank you. And one thing that I found the most common that's happening to a lot of people is that that moment, that experience, those things that are happening to them are to teach them how to say no, how to stand in their power, and to remove
set boundaries of what you can experience and what you don't want to experience.
Exactly. Thank you. Sorry, I've talked so long.
Yeah, and basically what I want to say, like, all the experiences that you have are like there to help you. And like even maybe the people or beings that don't have like the highest or best intent for you and like come into your life for whatever reason they have, they're also there to guide you on your path. And most likely you already agreed to that on like prior to coming in, because like that person or being is going to help you realize something, or he's going to help you like push you to the next level and actually standing in your power and being a sovereign creator being.
Right.
Yeah, even if it's not very pleasant while it's happening, but that's kind of why it's there.
Right, exactly. And it really does assist us. Before Trisha is in the middle of a dark night of the soul and was guided here just out of the blue, accidentally came to this conversation. And I want to say welcome, that you're not alone. Guardian has a great community called, it's a Patreon community if you ever want to join and be a part of a conversation like we are doing now. And just to know you're not alone. Keep checking out these things, follow this rabbit hole, and you'll find out a lot of them self-empowering things that you can do.
Yeah, like as higher vibrations as said just previously, are you going to have like the next Zoom meeting tomorrow?
That's right.
Okay, and you can go to her channel, to her YouTube channel. You have the link to her channel in the title of this video, and in the community section she will be posting the link to the next Zoom meeting.
That's right. That meeting will be held at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we go for 3 hours, though the last half hour we're doing a group meditation. So if you're running late, be sure to be there before we start, because I won't be letting anyone in after that. However, you're free to come and go as you please. You don't have to have your camera on or your audio on, and it's free. It's just a community of us having conversations. And yeah, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to do it after this call's over. I will post the link in the community section of my YouTube channel, and it's always there every week for you to find.
Okay, so
thank you
very much everyone for joining us. Thank you, High Vibrations, for all the beautiful perspectives and service that you provide to all of us.
Thank you.
Okay, so love you all and have a wonderful new moon this weekend.